Have you ever thought about stories where someone becomes the enemy just for doing what they think is right? It makes me think of Gladiator,
You've heard of it?
Maximus.
Oh, yeah, the loyal general.
Exactly. Loyal, has integrity, and suddenly he's public enemy number one. And there's that line from Commodus where he says you won't make him a martyr because, what was it? Their death speaks louder than their life ever could.
That's powerful. It really hits on the impact someone's convictions can have, right? Especially when they stand firm, even facing death.
It does. And that idea, it connects so directly to the story we're getting into today.
Yeah, we're diving deep into the book of Acts, specifically chapter 6, verse 8, all the way through chapter 7, verse 60. The story of Stephen.
Right. The text calls him a man full of grace and truth, yet he's killed. Why? Because he was faithful.
And it's wild because his death doesn't shut things down. Actually, the Bible shows it sort of fuels the spread of the gospel message.
Exactly. So, our mission for this deep dive, what we really hope you get from this, is a better grasp on the power of faithfulness specifically, spirit-empowered faithfulness when you're facing serious hostility, like Stephen did.
And just to be clear, all our source material for this comes directly from those chapters in Acts.
Okay, so let's start with Stephen himself. Who was he?
Well, the text introduces him as one of the first deacons,
Yeah.
chosen specifically as a servant leader in that early church community. And it repeats that he was full of the Spirit. That seems really key.
Full of the Spirit. Okay.
Yeah.
And pretty quickly, his teaching about Jesus causes trouble, right?
Big trouble. Acts says he gets accused of blasphemy, serious charges, and he's hauled before the Sanhedrin.
Main Jewish council, yeah. Religious, political leaders,
High stakes.
very high stakes. But instead of, backtracking or quieting down, Stephen launches into this incredible, really long sermon. It takes up almost the whole of Acts chapter 7.
And that sermon, it's packed with some heavy theological points, things we still wrestle with. Definitely. One huge statement he makes is, the Most High does not dwell in houses made by human hands.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, unpack that. For his audience, the temple in Jerusalem was the place, right?
Yeah.
God's address, basically.
Exactly. So saying God isn't confined to a building, that's radical. It challenges everything about their focus on the temple. So, key insight. God's presence isn't limited to a physical place.
It must have landed like a bomb. I mean, were there like whispers of this idea before, or was Stephen really pushing the boundary? It suggests God is, well, everywhere, more
It's-
accessible.
It really does. It points towards a relationship with God that's not tied down to one spot or certain rituals. It's much bigger, more personal. And then another major theme he hammers home is this pattern throughout their history
Yeah.
of rejecting the messengers God sent. He asks them straight up, which of the prophets did your ancestors not persecute?
Oof, that's confrontational. He's basically saying, look at your track record, folks.
He is. He lays out how God kept sending prophets, guides, people to call them back, and repeatedly those messengers faced rejection, sometimes violence. It's a tough history lesson. Insight. Israel historically resisted God's messengers.
So it's building up to something.
It is. It leads to his most direct, most powerful accusation. He looks right at the Sanhedrin and says, you betrayed and murdered him, you who received the law, but did not obey it.
And him is clearly Jesus.
Unmistakably Jesus. He calls him the righteous one.
So this sermon, it's not just like a history recap. It's like Stephen saying, all of this history, it was pointing to Jesus, and you've just repeated the pattern. You resisted God's ultimate plan by rejecting and killing his son.
That's exactly it. He's holding up that mirror showing how their story culminates in Jesus and how their resistance has been constant.
Wow. Are there other parts of the Bible that kind of echo these ideas?
Oh, definitely. Think about John chapter 3 where it says, light has come into the world and people love darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. That speaks directly to why people might reject a message, right? The truth can expose things we want hidden.
Yeah, that makes sense. The truth hurts, sometimes literally. It's uncomfortable when our stuff gets called out.
And then you have Paul in Galatians asking, basically, am I trying to please people or God? He says if he were still trying to please people, he wouldn't be a servant of Christ.
So faithfulness might mean you're not going to win any popularity contests.
Often, yeah. But then, even with that reality, there's this hope. John 16, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So even in Stephen's situation, terrible trouble, there's this undercurrent of Christ's victory.
Okay, so putting this together, Stephen's faithfulness, the rejection, these scriptures, it leads to a core idea, doesn't it?
Yes. Which brings us to this key insight we identified. This tension between God's plan for redemption and our own bent toward destruction is the natural course of things.
Say more about that. God's plan versus our tendency to mess it up.
Pretty much. It captures that constant push and pull. God moves towards restoration, healing, salvation. And often, our human default is to resist, to turn away, to choose our own path, even if it's destructive. It's just the way things often are in a broken world.
That resonates. And that tension doesn't just play out in big historical moments, right? It's personal, too.
Totally personal. We feel it, don't we? That desire to be bold, to share our faith, but also that very real desire to just fit in, to not rock the boat or face awkwardness or worse.
Oh, absolutely. Wanting to be faithful, but also one could be liked. It's a constant balancing act.
So we see Stephen's example, incredible faithfulness met with lethal hostility. Now, how does this apply to us? It forces us to ask a really important, maybe uncomfortable question.
Okay, let's hear it.
When we face opposition, or maybe just pushback related to our faith, are people reacting negatively because we're genuinely sharing the gospel in love? Or could it sometimes be because of how we're doing it? Maybe being obnoxious.
Ouch. That's a tough one. But necessary. I mean, I've definitely wondered that myself. Was that person annoyed by Jesus, or were they just annoyed by, well, by me?
Right. It's easy to assume all opposition is persecution. But sometimes, maybe it's just feedback. Maybe our approach is off. Maybe we're coming across as judgmental or self-righteous.
So the goal isn't just to speak truth, but to embody it with grace.
Exactly. We need to ask, is my witness, my sharing, genuinely spirit-empowered, full of grace like Stephen? Or is it maybe driven by my own ego, my pride, my need to win an argument? That self-reflection is crucial. Sometimes opposition isn't persecution. It might be a check on our own attitude.
Okay, so how do we start to tell the difference? How can we check ourselves? What are some practical things we can do?
Well, one really practical step is to think honestly about how people generally feel after they talk with you about faith stuff. Do they seem respected, even if challenged? Or do they seem defensive, maybe shut down, or like they've been lectured?
That's a good filter. It's about the relational impact, not just the information dump.
Exactly. The tone, the spirit, the respect, it matters hugely. And then it's not just about those big faith conversation moments, is it?
No, you mean like everyday life?
Yeah. Faithfulness plays out in the small things.
Right.
Our integrity at work or school, how we handle disagreements, do we show humility, gentleness, those daily actions preach pretty loudly.
It's the whole walk the talk thing, living it out. Like Stephen, he knew the scriptures so well, he could connect the whole sweep of history to Jesus in that moment. We need to know the story too, right? Enough to see how it connects to our lives and the lives of people around us.
Absolutely. Knowing the story deeply allows us to share it authentically. And to cultivate that kind of faithfulness, that grace and truth combo, we need spiritual practices.
Like what?
Well, prayer is foundational. Asking God specifically for courage and gentleness, for wisdom in how we interact.
Okay, makes sense.
And spending time in the Word itself, like maybe really meditating on Acts chapter 7 this week, letting Stephen's words and his examples sink in.
Immersing ourselves in that story. Good idea.
And one more, maybe a bit challenging. Have what we're calling a community conversation.
Okay.
Find someone you trust, who knows you well, and ask them point blank, hey, honestly, how do you experience my faith in my everyday life? How does it come across?
Wow, okay. That takes some vulnerability.
It does, but getting that honest feedback, it can be incredibly valuable for growth. It helps us see blind spots.
Those are really solid practical steps. Thanks. As we kind of wrap up our look at Stephen, there's this quote from Tim Keller you mentioned.
Yeah, Keller said, Stephen seemed to be the first Christian leader to grasp that the gospel has a radical missionary energy to it.
What's the significance of that? Missionary energy.
It means Stephen got it. This message wasn't just for one group or one place. Even facing death, he understood the gospel was meant to move, to expand, to go out into the whole world. His situation, ironically, helped make that happen.
That really reframes his story, doesn't it? It wasn't just a tragedy. It was part of a bigger outward movement.
Exactly. Which leads us to maybe the final challenge for everyone listening.
Go for it.
Are you willing to stay faithful even when it gets uncomfortable? Yep. When it might cost you something, popularity, maybe relationships, maybe just your comfort zone, even when it feels lonely?
That's the core question, isn't it? And it ties right back to Jesus' own words.
It does. Luke chapter 9. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me.
Taking up the cross.
Yeah. It's not about looking for suffering, but recognizing that following Jesus faithfully might lead us down difficult paths. It's a daily choice to put Christ first above our own ease or ambition.
So maybe a good closing thought, almost like a prayer to carry with us.
Yeah, perhaps something like, Lord, make us faithful like Stephen was. Help us be full of grace, full of truth, and give us courage. Let how we live, even if we face hard times, point people towards Jesus.
Amen to that. A powerful model and a challenging call for us today.